So today we're going to tackle the basics of Node-RED. So I'm going to show a little bit of the basics using the common nodes and the function nodes. And later on, I will discuss the MQTT, the basics of MQTT and how it works. So let's go ahead and do this, shall we? So for now, I have installed the Node-RED application on my personal computer, but it works the same with the installed version on the Raspberry Pi. So I have here, we're going to first discuss the common nodes. So we have different types of nodes in here. So the Inject Node, which injects a message into a flow. Let's see, either manually or at regular intervals. So it basically sends variables either in string or number in JSON data format. And to see the message that is being sent by this one, we're going to use a debug node. So it displays selected message properties in the debug sidebar tab, and optionally the runtime log. By default, it displays the message that payload, but can be configured to display any property, so you can read that on your own. So basically how it works is that we're just going to connect this one to the other node. So basically just like a wire. So those who are familiar with electronics, to complete a circuit, you must have it in, you must connect it by wires. So this is how it works. So let's see. In here we have the properties tab. So we can set the payload message. That message is a JSON data format, basically an object which contains a payload, which can either be a timestamp, a string, a number, a boolean, or even a JSON data format itself, or even a buffer. The same goes with the topic. Usually the topic is a string, but you can use a number or boolean or also JSON. So for now, we're going to leave this as is. Then this one tells that if we click this, then once we deploy the flow, it will automatically inject after 0.1 seconds. So this is, we can change this to 1 or maybe 10 or maybe 100 seconds. Then we can also do an interval. For example, we can send a trigger to send the message for every second, or 2 seconds, or even minutes and hours. We can also use an interval between times. For example, we can set a schedule every 13 and 14, basically 1 to 2 p.m. every day for every 1 minute between these times. Or we can set at a specific time, for example every 12 noon every day. And lastly, we can add another object, or rather variable. For example, we can set the contact. So we can set this like for example John Smith. So we can add other variables in the object, but for now we're going to stick in here. So as you can see, we're going to let it be retain the timestamp. Oh, I almost forgot. We're going to set this as none. Okay, so as you can see, there are blue circles in the top right of each node. This means that this node or this flow is not deployed or is not saved yet. So in order to save it or for this to disappear, we need to click the deploy button. Okay, so you have some unused configuration nodes. Click here to see them. Don't worry about it. So for now, we can now deploy this. So to trigger the timestamp, we just click the button right here. So as you can see, we have received a message that is received by the debug node. It is in long integer format, but we can change it just by clicking it to UTC format or universally coordinated time. We can also set it to our local time, which is 2:29:17 p.m. or a hexadecimal number. You can also view the complete message of the debug node. Again, since we changed it, we need to deploy. So as you can see, it says here that the message is an object which has a payload of a timestamp. But what if our payload is a string? For example, hello world. Again, click deploy. So as you can see right here, our message is now a string. Now, we can also set the payload as an object itself by setting up a JSON format. For example, let's set some parameters. Let's say JSON age, let's say 23, then location, let's say MNL for Manila, and lastly, for example, the message object is an attendance. So let's try present. We can set this to true. So now we have our JSON format in here. Don't forget to always put inside the double quote. It's really hard without a script. So now it's done. So we have set the object. Again, we need to deploy. Click right here. Then now we can see that the payload is an object itself. We can see that the payload has a name, age, location, and is present. Now, we can set this again to payload. But for example, we only wanted this one, the true. So we can go right here and copy the path, and then we can set the path in here. So as you can see, we're going to only read the message that payload dot present, which is right here. Again, we need to deploy. Then when we eject, we can see that we have received true, that the person JSON is present. Okay, so now we're going to leave this alone. And we're going to do this interval. For example, every 5 seconds, inject after 1 second, and done. You see, it automatically injects itself. Then after 5 seconds, it will send the data again. Now we're going to stop this, so because we don't need it anymore. Now there is a an option. So we can go for full, which deploys everything in the workplace. Modified flows only deploys flows that contain changed nodes or only modified nodes. I've been using modified nodes since I don't want the other flows to change. So we'll change it to modified nodes. Okay, so we have I almost forgot. Whenever you try to move the nodes, it also needs to be deployed. Now we can use a complete node, whereas it can detect if the message is complete. Now let's try if we can read anything from here. Now we will select the message payload. You know what? We're going to name this data receiver, so that we can differentiate. Okay. So let's see if we can receive a message. Yes. So we have received the message from here to here. Now it checks if the data receiver receive any message, then sends that message in here. You can also use status and catch, but I leave that to you. We're going to also use the link in and link out later on. And last one, the comment is just an ordinary markdown what do you call comment. Like you can set a code right here, like for example var x equals 1. So you can use this as markdowns. So if you're familiar with implementing markdowns, whenever you create a readme file at GitHub, so this is important too. But you can also use this as an ordinary text editor. For example, this is how Node-RED works. You can set the name to tutorial notes and deploy. So basically it doesn't do anything. It's just a container for the text. Now let's move on to the function nodes. So function nodes, they are essential for basic flow programming. You can create your own function using the function node. You always treat the input as an object, then return the object as itself. So for example, we're going to use this one. Let's say we receive a function from, let's say we receive a trigger timestamp, or let's say a boolean true. Now we can implement a function. For example, if message that payload equals, I think you can do this on its own. Then message that payload equals the message is true, else you can set the message that payload, the message is false, then return the message itself. we're going to name this simple function. And add, we're going to name this function receiver. Function output. Okay, again deploy, so we can check if it is true. See, the message is true. For example, let's set this to false. The message is false. Now, that's the basic of a simple function. It receives the message, then you can do whatever you want with that message itself. Or you can create your new function. Let's say that you want to only trigger this function, then set the message that, let's say, we name an object called out. Now, to create an object for out, we need to set some parameters first. For example, we will set the payload to let's say this is a new message. Then we don't need a topic, but for example, we only need a contact, or rather completed. You can set anything you want on the JSON data inside the object, so you can name it anything you want, but of course this will be relevant in the nodes that will receive this message object, so be careful with that. Let's try this is true. For example, what I'm talking about is, for example, when you're going to use an email. Okay, so let's first deploy this so that you can see the message first. Return out. So you see, we can use any type of input. Let's say, for example, a number 1 487, so it doesn't affect the function itself since we didn't use the payload inside. Okay, so again, there are a lot of things that you can do with this function. This is a very powerful node when it comes to developing your own IoT systems. So for example, what I'm talking about earlier is that you need to be careful when setting up the nodes that you're going to use. Let's say we're going to install a palette called email. So it is a simple Node-RED nodes to receive emails for it to add. Okay, so now we're done. So for example, we're going to take a look at the email function. Okay, so as you can see right here, this is the email node, which uses a user ID and password and the email address. But as you can see in the description, it sends the message payload as an email with the subject of message the topic. The default message recipient can be configured in the node. If it is left blank, it should be set to message that to property. So meaning we can also set the to. For example, let's say thinktechph@gmail.com. So we can use the message the to as part of the message object to connect in here. Again, since this is a string function, string variable, we're going to use a string, of course, and that's it. But I'm not going to show the email because I want you to learn it on your own. Okay, so that's what I mean when you're using the simple dot function. What if we have a function node that has multiple outputs? For example, let's say the output 1 is equal to the payload is equal to message that payload that input 1. We're going to use this later on, don't worry about it. Payload message that payload that input 2. So as you can see, we're going to set the message that payload that input 1 to out 1, then the message that payload that input 2 is going to be set to the payload of out 2. Now, to implement multiple outputs, we can return out 1 and out 2 respectively, then add the number of outputs in here. Okay, so now we have 2 outputs and single input. Now we can set the message that payload that input 2 to world, then message that payload that input 1 as hello. Remember to set it to string. Okay, so again, this is the specific address of the object for input 1 and input 2. Then we're going to put another debug node. We're going to set this as input from out 1. Again, we're going to use this is fine, from out 2. Now that's done, we're going to deploy this function. Let's press inject and see what happens. Okay, so as you can see right here, from out 1 we receive a string called hello, then from out 2 we receive a string called world. Remember that we have set the input 1 to be hello and the input 2 to be world. Then use a function to set the message to payload to out 1 and the message payload to of input 2 to out 2, then return both objects. So you can have multiple objects, multiple outputs rather, in here. What else? Okay, so we're going to use a switch function. Let's say that we're going to receive a message that payload that is equal to hello, and going to add one is equal to world. Now what this does is we use a switch function. Remember, when trying to code, it is one of the conditional statements. We have if and else, then we have switch. Then we can set the checking all rules or stopping after first match. We can also add, and we can set the contains or matches rejects or is true or is false in here. So let's just make this to hello and world. Now we're going to use a inject node again. We're going to use a string. Let's say hello, and again another message that payload. Let's say switch 1, then another one, no, switch 2, then we will connect in here. Okay, now we have the inject node with the payload of hello. Now if we're going to send that string in here, it will detect that if the message that payload is equal to hello, it will output the message in output 1. If the message that payload is equal to the word world, it will output the message to message 2. But if not, it will just not send the message at all, just like a switch function. So as you can see, we have received the word hello, but not from here. What if type Perl? Again, we can see the name world. What if we have a wrong string? It won't send anything at all. So that's how the switch function works. So if you don't know how to program or how to write code, you can use the switch node as well as the other nodes for that. Last one for the function node, for the functions. Let's set the message that payload to from Node-RED changer. So this means that we can set the received message that payload to Node-RED, or we can change it. For example, let's search for hello and replace it with world, or we can delete it or move it. So for now, let's go with I want to show you how to change it, or maybe set, so you can add others as well, but for now let's go to the change function. Again, we're going to use an inject node. We're going to use a string, then put a debug here. Let's use to change receiver. Deploy, then click right here. So as you can see, we have changed the word hello to world. Or we can set it to from Node-RED. Remember, it doesn't add, it only sets. Again, so if we set here, we can set the changer to from Node-RED, as you can see right here. So that's how the change node works. Now there are other function flows, nodes right here, but Again, I leave that all to you. Second to the last point, we're going to use a dashboard. So a dashboard is the UI component of the Node-RED. So as you can see, you can set your own dashboard right here. For example, let's set a new UI tab. Again, I have set my new UI tab way before, so it already is saved in here. But we can set, for example, home. This is the name of our tab. Then we can set the group name to default, or you can just not display the name at all. Add that. Then let's say receive status. So we can set the label as receive status. Then we can change the format to whatever we want. For now, we're going to leave it at the message.payload. Then we're going to set the different layouts for the value. I wanted to use this one. So we're going to name it to receive the text, and we're going to inject a timestamp. So we're going to string again. We're going to use the hello world from Node-RED. Deploy and inject. Okay, so now we have set the text to a dashboard. To view the dashboard, we can go to the localhost/UI. So this is your own Node-RED dashboard. So you can see we have the receive status, which is hello world from Node-RED. So that's how easy it is to set a dashboard. Let's do another one. Let's set a gauge. So we'll leave this in its own. Set the label to temperature. We can also set the unit right here. For example, degrees Celsius, then leave it blank. Then set the range to 100. Of course, the sectors are optional. For example, up to when will you show the green. Then, for example, let's say 70, meaning from 40 to 70, the gauge will be yellow. Then from 70 onwards, the gauge will be red. Let's name this temperature gauge. Then that's it. That's all for the temperature gauge. Now we're going to set a value, which is a number. Let's say 35 degrees. So we're going to use 35. Now when we deploy it, at first it doesn't receive anything at all. But when we trigger this 35, you can see that it's not 35. What if we set it to 41? If it is 41, then it's already showing yellow in the gauge. So that's how the gauge works. Of course, you can set it differently, like donut, compass, or level. But for now, I think gauge is enough. So that's how you basically set your own dashboard. To lay it out, to set the layout for the dashboard, let's see. Why is it? Let's delete this. Okay, done. because I want it to be in the same group. Okay, now we can set the layout in here as well. For example, we can increase the width. For example, let's try to make this smaller and this one larger. This is just a sample. Okay, as you can see, we have changed the layout of the dashboard, and that's how you use the layout. You can use site for the title, show the title bar or not. You can always click to show or swipe between tabs. And for the theme, you can use Node-RED everywhere or use Angular theme in UI templates. Then you can change this to dark or light. If it is dark mode, you can see right here it changes, or let's leave it at light. So that's how it works. If you wanted to export your flows, for example, you can export all of your flows. For example, we have the current flow or all the flows. Current flow pertains to the flow right here. So you can copy to clipboard, then set it to a text editor, then save it as a JSON file. Okay, so I think we have tackled most of the things or the surface of Node-RED, and I think we're only just scratching the surface here. Of course, I want you to learn most of it on your own. And now I think we're done with the basics of Node-RED. Let's just delete this so we don't have to use the dashboard anymore. Now we're going to use we're going to tackle next the MQTT. Okay, so MQTT stands for Message Queuing Telemetry something. So MQTT means Message Queuing Telemetry Transport. So basically it is a public or subscribed messaging protocol that works on top of the TCP/IP protocol. In layman's term, it's like a post office. Like, for example, I am the publisher and I wanted to send the message to a specific address, and that address is called a published topic. Now I send this to the post office, which is the broker. Now the broker will send the message to that address wherein my recipient is located. But in this format, for example, the monitoring system is subscribed to this topic, which is same as my published topic. So the monitoring system receives that message itself. So that's how basically broker works. Of course, we have here the clients and the topics and the messages and the broker. That's the basic infrastructure of MQTT. And of course, the client can also receive topics, can also subscribe rather to a topic, not only just publish. But it depends on how it is developed. Now, so I hope you do understand the very, very short explanation of how MQTT works. So that is all. Thank you. Just kidding. So of course I'm going to show you how MQTT works. Now let's try to access my Raspberry Pi. Now, in the Raspberry Pi, we have installed the Mosquito broker and the client. So we can set the Mosquito, and we can set the Raspberry Pi as the broker and also as the client itself. So what does that mean? So let me just open up another terminal with the same Raspberry Pi. So what I'm using right here is the host name and not the IP address of the Raspberry Pi, since it is easier to remember the host name rather than the address. So for this one, we'll set this as the subscriber, and this one is the publisher, and the Raspberry Pi itself is the network. First, let's set the subscriber. We're going to type the command mosquito _sub t and the topic. For example, test topic. No, I'm feeling a bit adventurous. Let's say home, temperature. And now it waits for the messages. Now we're going to publish a string that will be received by the subscriber. So we're going to type mosquito _ pub t, the topic, which is home, temperature. So of course, for this to work, the topics must be the same with each other, and the message to be hello from publisher. So now I've sent the message to the subscriber, hello from publisher. Now that is how MQTT works. Of course, there are a lot of factors that is going on behind the protocol, but it wouldn't be enough to discuss in just one video. But fortunately, we can do that here in Node-RED. Now we have the network for MQTT in and MQTT out, as well as the HTTP and WebSockets, TCP, and UDP. For now, we're going to use the MQTT. This one connects to the MQTT broker and subscribes to the messages from the specified topic. This is the same as the subscriber that we have just set. So this is a subscriber node. Now, I have already set the server to the host name of the Raspberry Pi itself. And of course, for now, we're not going to use the SSL TLS connection, and we're not going to implement security, nor we're going to use the birth, death, and last will and testament. For now, we just need to understand how do we transfer messages, or how do we receive and how do we publish messages to this broker. Now we're going to set a topic. Let's say home humidity. Now the quality of service is dependent on how good do you want your message to be received. 0 specifies most once, or once and only once, without acknowledgement. QoS of 1 is at least once until the delivery is acknowledged, and 2 is exactly once. So it means assured delivery For now, we're going to use 0. Now, let's see the description. So the output is a payload and a topic, QoS, and retain. Now we can set right here a debug node. So we can set this to complete message object to see the message itself. Now using the publisher, this is the publisher and this is the receiver, the subscriber. So we're going to change this to humidity. Now we're going to send the message hello from publisher, send, and it receives the message payload hello from publisher with the QoS of 0 and no retain in the topic of home humidity. So that's how we subscribe to a topic in Node-RED. Now, what about if we're going to send the MQTT topic? For now, we're going to set a timestamp here. Let's say hello from Node-RED. I think you can set the topic here. Home that monitor. Let's see. And so it says here the payload to publish. No message will be sent if it is not sent. The topic, so we can set the topic from here. The QoS will set it in here itself. Let's try to set it in here. Let's see. QoS. So let's check the QoS. It is a number. Let's set this to 0. Then last one, retain to boolean false. Okay, so now we have completed the message itself, so no need to configure other things in here. Deploy. Of course, we're going to set a subscriber. I'm going to use this as a subscriber. Okay. Now this is subscribe. If we click this one, injected hello from Node-RED, we're going to receive the message from our publisher. Hello from Node-RED. So that's it. That's how MQTT basically works. Of course, in order for it to be applicable in the industry, of course you're going to learn more about security and how to retain messages, the last will and testament, and the clients, and so on and so forth. But for now, you have learned the first step in learning MQTT. You know what MQTT is now, and all that's left is for you to learn more about it on your own. And I hope you enjoyed this video. Thumbs up if you like this video. Please share and subscribe. Of course, Node-RED and MQTT is a very wide topic to be discussed, and it is not enough to be discussed in a single video. But I hope This can be a stepping stone for you to explore the world of Node-RED and MQTT and IoT. Again, thank you very much. Never stop learning, and I'll see you in the next video.